All right, we are live, and I am super excited today because Elizabeth Lotardo and I met in sort of our book writing journey. We both published books around the same time. She has this awesome book called Leading Yourself. She is a consultant, writer, and online instructor who helps organizations drive emotional engagement. Her new book, as I mentioned, Leading Yourself, has been called a refreshingly candid playbook that helps you create a work experience worth loving right now. And I always say to people, like, for me, if I'm still talking about a book like weeks and weeks after I read it, it's a really good book. And I have been talking about this book for months now. So anyway, that is my intro of Elizabeth, and I am going to pass it over to you and ask you our favorite question, which is, what is on your mind?
Well, high praise, Jeff, and back at you. It means a lot coming from a great author who tackled this sort of underrepresented part of work. What's on my mind? Let me share the stat with you that I just read, and I want y'all's take on this. 2 in 3 workers feel stuck at work. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, at
Yes.
least.
I would
At
say
least.
I would say
Easy.
2 out of 3 hosts quit their jobs on this podcast because of this issue.
I did not mean to go there.
Maybe all three. Maybe all three.
Global issue.
Yeah. I mean, what's wrong with the other third that didn't?
That didn't feel stuck at work.
They didn't fess up.
Yeah, right.
They are so stuck
They
they
were
can't
worried their
admit
boss
that
was
they're
watching. But I mean, we're laughing now, but to me that stat was really sad, because if 2 in 3 people are reporting that they don't feel like they have a next play in their role, they don't like it, they don't know what to do, like, what does that say about our emotional health at work as a world?
Yeah, it's not good.
Well, most likely it says that the organizations are very focused on the numbers, right? Especially right now, they're also very focused on navigating the uncertainty or turmoil or whatever you call the current situation. And everything else just kind of falls off the radar and we see the result.
I think that's so true. And I don't know for you all, is Jeff frozen for you?
Yeah, Jeff is
It looks like he finds
No,
this
Jeff
conversation
sometimes just
hilarious.
no, Jeff sometimes sometimes he just like and the same expression for like very, very long periods of time. No, he's frozen.
At least it's a good facial expression, but that's all
That's
right.
right.
We're having a
Good
good
word.
time here.
Oh,
But yeah, I
so
think
interesting.
it's disheartening. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, unfrozen.
Is it your? Oh no, frozen again. All right. Anyway, go ahead, Elizabeth. Keep talking. Don't worry about
Well,
Jeff. He's fine.
I think it's disheartening. And I think some of it is the organization's responsibility, that they are probably overly focused on granular metrics. But the individual is paying the price. And that's some of what Jeff and I both captured in the book, is in each of our respective books in different ways. Even if you're unhappy at work, like, ultimately that's on you.
So you're saying that you. So it's. Are you saying that's on you and that you need to change your behavior in order to make it better, or it's that's on you, meaning get out of that job and find something different?
I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Like, whether it is you changing your behavior, whether it is you changing your career, changing your role, the ultimate responsibility is on you, because you're the one that pays the price for unhappiness. Your organization's going to be okay if you're miserable, but you won't be.
Or sometimes I would say even change your perspective. That too.
Absolutely.
It is on
I,
you.
I think that's true, but I do think there are times where not just the perspective, right? Like I was just talking to just had coffee with him the other day, and he's talking about how he wasn't super happy with his boss. His boss is a classic micromanager who is, was not only criticizing him about like every single detail about how he's writing the presentation or whatever, but he was also talking about like behavior, like in a not like in a like editing his like how to speak the CEO, or how do you like just super granular stuff. And I was like, wow, I think there are ways to work with that boss. I can't see a long-term solution to that particular problem.
That's valid. And there's a big spectrum, right? Of annoying to garbage to abusive bosses in workplaces. And that some of what I dug into in Leading Yourself is the subtitle is find joy, meaning, and opportunities in the job you already have. I should put like an asterisk on it, like unless this small amount of things apply. Because there are those situations that maybe they're workable, and in the middle when you're trying to figure it out, that can be valid. But in the long term, you're better off somewhere else. And the distinction is one that is so hard to recognize early in your career.
I have a
It's really
question.
hard.
I
Go
think,
ahead.
speaking of early career, right? A lot of this requires self-awareness. A lot of it also requires admitting to yourself that you are in a situation that needs fixing, right? And people choose to be in denial because it's kind of easier to be there, right? What's your take on that?
I think that's true. And the challenge with social media, as much as we can learn and connect with each other, is it has no problem reinforcing the narrative that everyone else is the problem, right? Surely I'm not doing anything wrong. It's my boss and they're not empathetic enough. And it's my organization and they're not purpose driven enough. And it's all these other things that other people should be doing. I mean, it's a classic expression that we judge ourselves by our intent and others by their actions, and to assume that everyone wants us to be miserable and underperforming is a false assumption in most cases.
Yeah, I used to talk about when I was in my corporate role. I used to talk about like um, benign neglect, well, mostly malignant, malign neglect, which was like they don't. Most people don't actually actively want you to be miserable. They just not that top on their priority that you're miserable, which isn't necessarily great as a
But in
boss,
their
but it is
defense, like, are they on the top of your priority list?
well,
Probably not.
but they might be.
Yeah, maybe in that
But
situation.
not in a healthy way, like in an unhealthy way.
So, Elizabeth, I have a question. As an author, right? One day you decided, you know what? I see a lot of the certain dynamics and I want to do something about it and help this world deal with it. Talk to us about how that happened.
So I'll tell you my journey to writing this book, and it was different than a lot of other authors who have this like cloud parting moment, and I see so clearly what the world needs. Mine was like messier and took longer. I started in 2017 talking about leading yourself, and I was talking about it on LinkedIn Learning. And at that time, in 2015 to 2020, LinkedIn Learning was exploding. From lynda.com emerged LinkedIn Learning. And because of that, they were building all kinds of content on their leadership library. And I approached them with, okay, what about leadership, but like when you're not in charge? And it was this kind of messy, nuanced concept that I didn't have quite right at the time, but they were in hyper growth mode. They were like, yeah, okay, sure, run with it, see what you can do. And I made a course on leading yourself and owning your role, managing up, navigating changing circumstances, really owning your career. And it did well. But in 2020, when the pandemic hit, everything changed. And the analytics on that course, it was like someone poured gasoline on them. And I was surprised at first, but when I started to unpack it and talk to some of the learners, I learned that when your manager is not right next to you, when all the fun parts of work, like your coworkers and the free coffee and going to lunch, when all of that's removed, when the market is facing great uncertainty, the need to lead yourself takes center stage, because it became really clear that no one is going to look out for you and make work great for you besides you. And that has only continued to accelerate. So this messy concept in 2017 became more clear in 2020 when I redid the course in light of the pandemic. It became even more clear as I started training organizations on this concept, working with individuals who had executed, identifying the challenges, the opportunities, the most important bits. And 8 years later, I felt like I had enough to write a book. So a messy, windy journey that is not that like cool, but I think the messiness of it enabled me to produce something that can move the needle on emotions and is really practical, as opposed to not including Jeff's book, but a lot of businesses' books, which remain largely theoretical.
Totally. And
I feel
Jeff
like
is
I
now
feel like
on
you should define
the
your
video.
own. I was going to say, I feel like you should define your own cool, based on your own kind of philosophy. I feel like that is a cool story.
All right. Well, it's my story, so maybe it is cool. Maybe
Yes,
it's cooler than some like
I
aha.
haven't written a book. I've never written a book. So, anybody who's written a book has already reached a level of cool for me.
It is
So
not for
Jeff
the
is
faint.
back. That's good. Jeff is no longer frozen.
I don't know what happened there. I moved rooms, whatever. Anyway, it's all good. I hopefully you can all hear me.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Welcome
Welcome back.
I have no idea what you all have talked about, but I'm guessing you've not talked about this. Is it one of the things that I remember from your book that I talk about a lot is this idea that you talk about, whereas and you probably tell this, you can definitely tell the story better than I can, but this idea that if you are sort of expecting work to be bad, it will be bad. And if you're expecting it to be good, it will be good. And I think in this book, if I'm remembering correctly, you tell this story about a group of friends that you had, and that everybody was having. Anyway, I'll let you tell the story, but you know what story I'm talking about.
Well, it's a timeless truth, right? Our perception, our mindset creates to some degree our reality. I started the book out with admitting openly that I really sucked at self leadership for a long time. And I blamed organizations and my boss and the job and the market and any external variable I could find for why I wasn't fulfilled at work and I wasn't getting the opportunities that I wanted. And that was on me. We grow, we evolve, we self reflect. But the story, Jeff, that I think you're referring to is that doesn't happen to everyone. Some people are innate self leaders. And I saw when I graduated college, we were all optimistic, wide eyed going into the world of work. Most of us got hit in the face, myself included, and we're pretty miserable only a few months in. But not everybody. A few people had managed to hold on to that optimism. And despite imperfects and setbacks and all the nuance of work, they were still excited and they were getting opportunities and they felt fulfillment, even though they weren't like in the Peace Corps. So in hindsight, I saw that those people were leading themselves, and that instead of hoping for opportunities, they were creating them. Instead of waiting to find fulfillment, they were making fulfillment in the job that they had. And it didn't come naturally to me, but it's something I did learn, and something that over the last decade plus, don't anybody do the math, I've gotten a lot better at. So some people are innate at this. I am not one of those people, and I think that's why I was the good person to write the book.
Elizabeth, when you say leading yourself, or self leading, it's not the same as self direction or motivation, right? There's something qualitatively different about it. Can you? I mean, you've sort of gotten at this, but maybe more directly, what is it you mean when you're talking about that?
When I talk about leading yourself, I mean owning your role, whatever seat you are in, examining all the things that are within your control, all the levers that you can pull, even if it's only your own mindset, in taking charge of that. So a little bit of it is self-direction, a little bit is self-motivation, but this notion that you need to wait to be led by your boss or the CEO or four randos on a podcast is not one that I believe in. I think each of us have the power to be in the driver's seat of our own career.
I would add to that. I would say that a lot of people would say, well, I'm led to deliver the next result because I know what my project needs. I'm led to, bring in the business or whatnot. But there is another aspect to it is how do you, and that's what Jeff talks about quite a bit in his book, how do you interact with your peers? How do you interact with your reports? How do you manage your career? So the less tangible kind of stuff that a lot of people just overlook.
Yeah, the soft stuff is the hard stuff, right? Like that's what makes or breaks your career trajectory is how can you manage your relationships with the people around you? How can you motivate yourself? How can you be fulfilled even when things are hard?
I was having this interesting conversation over the many months with this person that doesn't live in Boston but is in Boston every once in a while. So we have coffee when she's in Boston, and she was telling me this story about how, or she was telling me about how her boss was sort of micromanaging all this terrible stuff and whatever. And I said, I gave her, I was like, hey, try this stuff. There's a lot of the stuff that Elizabeth, you and I talk about. Change your approach to this. Don't fight. I would say when people have micromanaged about something, like just lean into it, like just stop trying to fight it. Like just, sometimes I like feed the beast, eventually
give them so many updates. They wish you'd stop.
Exactly right. They will stop you. Right. And, so many months later, I'm talking to this person over coffee. I'm like, how's it going? And the person says, well, it's going great, or was going great. But then I went off on vacation, and when I came back, it was all back to the way it was. And I thought I thought things had changed. And I said, well, I thought my boss had changed. And I said, your boss didn't change. And she's like, no, I mean, it was totally different. I'm like, no. Like, this is why it went back. Like I said, I've started to use the term boss GPT. It's like you were prompting your boss in a certain way. And so they started acting in a different way. And when you were away and you weren't prompting your boss, they go back to, they just default back to who they are. And so I think so much of what you're talking about is this idea of like, you control you, right? You control how you prompt the people around you, the people that work for you, the people that you work for, the people that are your peers. You control that. And I think that's, I don't know, I don't think it's, and what I appreciate what you said before about kind of the reason you are so great for writing this book was because you struggled through how to do this. And I think that's exactly right. And I would say the same thing. It's like some people seem to naturally know how to do this. The rest of us have to learn. But I think it's teachable. I mean, I don't know. Would you agree that it is teachable? I guess you wrote a book. So.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm banking on from a career perspective. But and in athletics, it's common knowledge that the best coach is not the star player.
Right.
It's because for the star player, it came naturally, right? They never really had to learn and break it down and fight and get up time and time again.
Right.
The books that are written on how to be, a purpose-driven leader are often written by people who are innately that way. I want to read one from an accountant who thinks purpose is weird. Like the playbook is always in someone who had to break it down to those small parts and teach.
Yeah, I think that's right. It's hard to teach something that you haven't had to learn, right?
But I also think the issue that you're talking about is so multifaceted that certain things you could be good at. For example, optimism, right? Or managing sideways, but you are not going to be about managing up. And yet there's so many facets that make or break this kind of self-to-work relationship. It's complicated. Go ahead, Eric.
So, yeah, I actually want to build on that, Elena, because one of the things that I've been thinking about as Elizabeth has been talking is this the concept, and I don't think we've discussed it yet, that so many people's identities, financials, their ability to support their family, so much is tied up in your job, right? Who you are, are you successful, whatever. How do you think about like that must be a huge distraction to leading yourself if you're not handling it the right way.
We definitely socially tie a lot to our jobs, right? The first thing someone asks you when you sit down on a plane, what do you do? If you're dating someone, your friend's like, oh, what do they do? Which is code for like, do they have an education? Do they make a lot of money? There's all these subtleties behind that question in our social interactions. And divorcing yourself from that does matter. Having said that, I think the narrative that's going around now is a dangerous one, that you should completely emotionally disconnect from your work. It shouldn't be any source of meaning or fulfillment from you. It's just this thing that gives you a paycheck. Your life doesn't depend on that. And I see where that's coming from. In my opinion, the pendulum has swung too far in the other direction. Like, we were hyper obsessed with our work identity. But to suggest that this thing we spend 50 hours a week on for the majority of our life is meaningless, like, that comes with its own set of consequences. So, truly believing that your worth is not correlated to the title you have at the time or your quota attainment of this year, whatever it is valid. Having said that, emotional disconnection is not the answer, in my opinion.
And I don't know if you all have been watching Severance, but
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I don't know.
I haven't seen it. It's probably on the TV channel that I don't have, but yeah, I was thinking about that the whole time.
I've heard a lot of people talk about that show.
Yes, it's creepy, but it's interesting. You might find it fascinating, but anyway. Enough of that, because it is now time. I am clearly having a bad technology day, so I hope this works. So I'm going to. We always like to have ChatGPT. Actually, I like to say that ChatGPT likes to ask questions. So it's going to join us for a second, and I'm going to ask you. I asked it funny questions to ask. Somebody with your background. I think it was particularly stupid this time, but we're going to go with it. All right.
Okay, shoot.
So I usually ask.
Jeff, it's this level of judgment that makes it hard for people for ChatGPT to work with you.
Exactly. Would you like absurd first or thought-provoking first?
Let's go with absurd for 300.
All right. I don't know. These are stupid. You don't actually have to answer these. I'm caveating, but what's the most emotionally engaged you've ever seen someone get over a printer jam?
I kind of love this question. Okay, I'll take it. And maybe I should have prefaced at the start, when I say emotionally engaged, I mean positive. But I've certainly seen a lot of negative emotional engagement when it relates to printer jams. So the other day, I was sitting in line at the DMV, and the lady next to me said that she used to work for Apple. And she worked in customer success. The people who call them are not feeling successful. So she got like cussed out all the time. She was constantly berated for like a technology failure, like a printer. And I think that when the printer jams and you do have this heightened level of emotional engagement, it's like a release to all the things you hate about work get like funneled through that ink cartridge. And you see these like huge reactions to contextually small technology problems. But that was just like the tipping point. So much of us walk around our work experience with angst and anger and resentment and frustration, and all it takes is a freaking printer cartridge to just let it all go. So that's how I would connect printer cartridges, emotional engagement, and leading yourself.
Awesome! That was terrific.
That was great.
Now I'm supposed to find one that is thought-provoking, and these are all kind of absurd.
Well, that last one was thought-provoking, so I think you already accomplished.
All right, so I can go with whatever I want. So I'm gonna go with where did this one go? If office furniture could talk, which piece would give the best leadership advice, and why is it always the sad plant in the corner?
Why is it always the sad plant in the corner? No one waters it. Put your own oxygen mask on first.
I don't know if that's a good question or bad question, but
no. I feel like it's probably something subtle. It's like the stand that makes the monitor swivel or something, like hidden agility advantage in there.
right? That like something, some piece of equipment or furniture that like makes all the things go well, but nobody realizes.
Yeah, it's the extension cord that would give the best piece of advice.
All right, those were particularly stupid, so I feel like it's time to move on to real questions.
It's all good. It's all good.
They're fun.
So what's a piece of advice you would give? So we were just talking at the beginning. I think somebody was maybe Elena, you were talking about your kids who are college age or whatever. What is a piece of advice that you give to people who are about to start their career? How can they kind of build this into this kind of thinking? Of course, reading your book is one way, but how can they build this into thinking from the beginning?
So I'll share with you the dedication of my book, which is to my son, who is not college age, but will be one day. What I said was, you are never powerless. And if I could go back and give 21-year-old me any advice, it would be, you have so much more power than you think you do. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to influence the strategic direction of the company in some profound way. It doesn't mean I'm going to boss everybody around to get all my things done. What it means is that your ability to manage your mindset, to own your behavior, to pour into the relationships that you want to build, like that is all within your control. And that is the most important element of a fulfilling career. And you can spend your time lamenting about all the dumb policies and decisions of other people, or you can zoom in on the levers that you can pull. And I spent several years not doing that. And when I started doing that, things got a lot better.
And on that, I actually would like to talk about positive mindset and just staying constructive and positive. And once you kind of see people do that, what that mindset does to them.
I love that question. And I'll share with you the best brain hack for this that I learned from a woman named Tessa Romero. So, my beef with like positive mindset historically has been, it felt like it was dismissing the very real struggles or frustrations or wrongdoings and just like, oh, well, you just got to be positive, as if this other stuff somehow doesn't exist. But the hack that helped me hold both of those things is using the phrase, this is my chance. And I'll give you an example. So like AI, so disruptive, so hard to make content, right? All over LinkedIn. Bleh. Positive mindset would be like, it's okay. That doesn't matter. I'll do okay. But this is my chances. This is my chance to bring my uniquely human value to the fore. This is my chance to switch up my medium. This is my chance to focus on quality, not quantity of interactions. That phrasing to me has enabled me to step into a situation empowered while acknowledging some stuff is not going great. And I think the ability to do that inside of a workplace where things inevitably go wrong is a really important ice cutter skill in igniting your own engagement.
So I think as you were saying that, a couple of things you said have made me think of a couple of different Viktor Frankl quotes. I'm sure you're familiar, but the one that came to mind was "Suffering ceases to be suffering when it finds a meaning," or something like whatever. I think that's the quote. But that's kind of what you're talking about. Is like if you can turn like this terrible moment. You're not saying it's not suffering, but it's like, you know, if there's a reason for it, like this is my chance to do the thing, and
Yeah.
it changes the whole thing. So I think that, I don't know if you're a Viktor Frankl fan.
Oh, absolutely. I wrote Leading Yourself. Please, Jeff. Of course I'm a Viktor.
But yeah, I think that, you know, that idea that like, you know, running a marathon is, you know, like a painful, you know, slog, but it, you know, if that's your goal, then it's just totally different than being forced to run 26 miles. Yeah. I you know, I wonder if there's anything that, you know, we talked a little bit about advice that you give, you know, people just starting out. What's the advice you give people who are like in the middle of their career, feeling stuck? You know, you brought that up at the beginning. Like, what's the advice you give those people?
So we'll go back to famous quotes.
Okay.
There's a Chinese proverb. I think it's a Chinese proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was 100 years ago. The second best time is today. The best time to learn to lead yourself is your first job when you're 15 and you're at the ice cream store and you're going to, take some initiative and be empowered. The second best time is today. If you are feeling stuck inside of your job right now, we started this conversation with the acknowledgement that 2 in 3 people are feeling stuck in their jobs. No one is coming to unstick you.
Right.
It has to come from you. There will never be some magic job that lands in your lap. Your boss is not going to go to a webinar and emerge the most purpose-driven, inspiring leader in the world. None of that's going to happen. And that can feel defeating and sad. But from my vantage point, it is also empowering because it shows you that the power is in your hands to change this. And it doesn't need to be a giant 180. Through intentional mindset shifts, through subtle behaviors, through prioritizing some specific relationships, you can change this work experience for yourself and feel unstuck.
I'm trying to reconcile, because I know that there is legitimate workplace toxicity out there. There are behaviors, there are horrible behaviors, there's harassment, there's, bullying and whatever that goes on in the workplace all the time. How do I'm taking your message and it makes perfect sense and it resonates with my experience, but it also just I feel like we have to acknowledge that there are times when people really are awful to
Yes,
other
back
people.
to the asterisk, not always.
Right.
So I made this chart in the book that is examples of annoying behavior, which is kind of ever present in any organization. Garbage behavior, like pretty bad and taken for large durations or large volumes, should definitely raise your eyebrows. And abusive behavior,
Mm-hmm.
behavior that is not okay. So an example would be your manager is a little bit micromanaging. They follow up on their email 30 minutes after they sent it during lunch. That's not ideal. That's annoying. Garbage would be them blowing up your phone saying, are you committed to this or not? That's garbage. If that is a repeated occurrence or if that is going on for a long time, that is a sign. Abusive behavior is them coming to your desk, slamming your laptop shut and saying, hey, idiot, do you not know how to read? There is a huge spectrum of this.
Yes.
And I wanted to dig into, I'm not going to convince anybody to stay in a job that's toxic because that's ridiculous. But all jobs are imperfect. And being able to recognize those distinctions help us make better career decisions.
And I think,
Go ahead, Jeff.
no, I was going to say, and I think that to the conversation we are having earlier, when you get into the first two columns, like annoying and garbage, you can turn the job toxic if you have the wrong mindset.
Yes.
But I do think, but on the flip side, when you get to the toxic and abusive, is I think, and I can't remember, you may talk about this, there is a moment where leading yourself is getting yourself out.
Yes.
And so I think, I would say, you don't have to stay. The question is, if you do stay, are there things you haven't tried yet that might make this easier instead of just saying, this is all terrible?
Yes. If you've already decided to stay, let's make the most of it. But you're right. And you said it more concisely than I did. Sometimes it is leading yourself out.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and actually, I think it's not only this, if you've decided to stay, it's the reality may be you need to stay until you find the next job. You should just act as if you're staying until, in terms of doing what you're talking about, Elizabeth, you should move the needle to as bearable as possible and and then get out is also a result. We are over the half an hour mark, so as always, it flies by. We are so happy that you joined us, Elizabeth. But as we warned you in the beginning of the episode or before the episode, we'd like to go around and ask everybody to give one thing they want to leave the audience with. Sounds like you've probably watched or seen some of our episodes before, so you probably know that I always make the guest go first. Because I
I
always
was
make a joke
prepared.
about it. So you're prepared. What's one thing you want to leave the audience with?
The grass is greener where you water it. You can be the change you want to see inside your organization instead of lamenting all the things that should be different. Power's in your hands.
Absolutely. Well, before I give my one thing, first, thank you so much. It's always so great to talk with you. What is the best place if people want to reach out to you, connect with you, work with you, whatever? What's the best place for them to reach you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Elizabeth Lotardo, also elizabethlotardo.com. I'm easy to track down and responsive to emails.
Awesome. Well, I guess for me, building on all of the things that we've been talking about, I think that, and building on what you just said, is just there. I always say to people, like, you don't get to choose your boss, you just get to choose how you work for them. And I think that's, back to my sort of, which I've now shortened to boss GPT, but I think that idea of like, you actually, to the point you made earlier, you control so much more than you think you do, because you actually control how you're prompting all those people around you. So that's my one thing. I will pass it to Elena.
I would build on it. And my favorite point was that there is no better day than today, because the sooner one takes this responsibility and ownership, the better their work being and therefore the entire being gets.
And I'm going to go back to this conversation that we had about, sort of the weighting your work and your identity versus dissociating your work from or disassociating, however you say that word, disassociating your work from the rest of your life. And that it's not, that neither of those two things are the right. There's some balance where you need to have a multifaceted personality outside of work as well as work, but you also have to understand and accept that is part of a major part of your life. And so again, I want to thank you, Elizabeth. This has been a fascinating discussion. We loved having you. And we are going to keep watching this space of leading yourself.
Back at you. Thanks for having me. I love chatting with the three of you. I know we all share a belief that work can be better, and it's in each person's hands to make it so.
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
You.